before they went on the market. So when I was looking at the comps at the time, one of the most recent sales we had was this one here at 365. And that was also a very similar style property. And based on that and days on market, I had encouraged my clients to come on at 360 because I never want to come on the market at what I think is the peak listing price. My goal is always to come slightly under what I think market value is in an effort to garner more attention to the property and have it sell in multiple offers, or if possible, get as much attention on it versus come on at the peak and alienate a large percentage of buyers. So for this house, I had recommended we would come on at 360. And now we've had this one that sold at 365. It was a pending transaction at the time. And I didn't want to look too far outside of the neighborhood because of what I know about appraisals. So if you see over here, and I would encourage you to think about this too when you're doing your market analysis, is an appraiser is going to look at not just that specific neighborhood, but you know, these major roads here. This is Bunker Lake Road, and I can't remember what the name of this one is, but on this side of the screen, we have Andover, and I've got similar properties here that would be a nice comp to justify maybe a much higher price point, but it is in a different zip code, even though it's right across the road. And there are some different factors in when this neighborhood was built. So I can look at it as kind of a guideline for what properties of similar style are selling in the area. But an appraiser is really going to focus more on what's selling in this neighborhood here. And you can see we've got price points all over the board. So I have to go through and look at each one of these and kind of determine what I think are factors. Now this house here is the lowest one in the neighborhood. And I wanted to figure out why that sold at 300 because it's a fairly similar listing. And on this particular site, I like the fact that I can highlight, if I check here at the top, I'm going to be able to highlight these different listings and put them on my list down here of which ones I want to take into consideration. So this one is 1319 Sunny Lane. And when I click my drop down in my notes, I've got all the details I need when I'm doing my comparison. So for this house, it is, I'm sorry, guys, I have such a terrible frog in my throat today. I apologize if you can't understand me very well. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's about 400 square feet less than the one that I am selling. And when going through the pictures, you can tell that it's got a deck in the backyard. It's got a similar size lot to what my clients have. The deck is in pretty decent condition. It's a lot smaller, but then I'm starting to go through the house, and while there are similar features, I can tell right away that the carpet is in pretty rough shape, that this is a laminate style flooring that's older. This is probably the original kitchen. They haven't done a ton of updates based on what I've read in the comments to this house. And so I'm starting to think about what would it take price-wise for this listing to match the listing that I have. How much would it cost for a homeowner buying at this $300,000 price point to put in new flooring to match the quality of the flooring in the house that I have? To maybe make updates to the windows, to have a new bathroom setup. You can tell this is older tile that's in, an older countertop as well, or vanity, I should say, and flooring. And then as I go through these pictures, I'm looking at the quality of the flooring as well, drop ceiling, etc. And so to me, this house sold a little bit lower, and you'll notice it was only on the market for 1 day, so it appealed to a certain type of buyer. It sold for $300,000. When I'm going back to my client's listing and I'm looking at how all the windows have been updated, it's got a new roof, it's got newer mechanical systems. You can see here, it looks like maybe they had some kind of water issue or something that went on in the basement below grade with this. So this house needs a lot of work. Sorry. And now I'm kind of getting in my mind what I know, and this comes with experience, I guess, for me, is, you know, what it's going to cost to replace all the carpet in that house. Realistically, that's probably somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, maybe a little bit more. And part of what I base it on is I just had all the carpet redone in my own house this last fall. So I know that there are providers who can do a decent level of carpet in that range. And then I think about what would it take to have all new appliances installed, hardwood floors throughout the main floor, some of those factors. And I think had this been in a more move-in ready condition, we would be looking more similar to what a house like this sold for. Let me find this one. 33.7. So here I'm in the same zip code, same neighborhood. It closed at 365,000. It just sold in February. It has a very similar style, kind of brick front, etc., as my client's house does. It was 26 days on market. They listed in December, and we all know what was happening kind of between October and December when we saw a dip with buyers out there because rates had gone up. So I'm keeping that in mind of taking that into consideration with how many days on market and what was happening with buyers at that time. We just saw a slowdown during that month. But now as I'm going through this, the entrance to this house is very similar to what my clients were. It's got what appears to be newer flooring. And the remarks are not showing on this one, but they were on the MLS when I had reviewed it. And another thing is, I take this site because I like the way that I'm able to do the comparisons. And I will still go back and I will review the actual listing on the MLS so that I can compare comments, see if there's any additional information with that. I will also look up maybe the tax records on my property to see, like what the total days on market are for comparisons. I don't know how to describe that. Let me see. That's something you can do under realist tax when you're looking at comparables. If you haven't used that, I could show you how to use that in person. Again, I just wasn't planning on doing this today. Sorry. I'm looking at the flooring. I'm looking at the quality of the light fixtures, total amount of square footage again. And I would say this property actually has more square footage, but has a very similar layout and upgrades, has some older cabinetry than my clients. So this was one of the best comps that I had in the neighborhood. And it was in the same, not just the same neighborhood, but it had all the similar styles as well. And similar to the year built as my client's house. The exception being this large porch off the back. After kind of factoring all that in, for this, I can select the comps and then that I want to use. This one I'm not going to use, but I use this for comparison just to kind of see what was happening in the area, again, for how quickly houses were selling. And I'm going to take the ones off that I don't think apply. And then I'm able to customize my report from there. And in here, I have I have some updating I got to do, I apologize, but you have the option to create like a little agent bio sheet for yourself, to do some different stats and data on what you would do or information that you want to give to your client, how a value of a home is determined by appraiser. I can have a map added that is going to show where each of the listings is that I compared to it. It's going to give me a side-by-side report that's parallel of what the beds and bathrooms are, as well as days on market and the percentage that it's sold for, either when compared with offer price, if it's sold for over ask or under ask. And I like that I'm able to give a detailed list of information to my client to establish a price point. Now, I'm not sure how everybody does their CMAs, but more often than not, I do I guess like a two-part approach to my market analysis. So I meet with the client in person. I want to look at the condition of their house. And I'll have a kind of a basis in mind of what's been selling in their area, so that then I'm going in and I'm looking for specific features and updates that have stood out to me. And I want to make sure that it's not something that's just going to add appeal versus what's going to add value. And that's something that you'll have to take into consideration as well. A lot of people will like you to come into their house and say, well, we repainted everything. Well, repainting a house might add appeal to it, but it doesn't necessarily add value. Have they added square footage? Have they made updates to major mechanical systems? Have they done new flooring, kitchens, bathrooms? Those type of finishings are what are going to increase or establish value in a property. And I have a little sheet that I will try and make available to people. I don't have it with me right now, sorry guys. That talks about some of the return on investment that you get when you make certain type of updates to a house. And so you can go into your listing appointment with that information as well, and encourage your client to, if their goal is to get the most money out of their property, what type of updates are they considering doing? Now, we can talk about people who are ready to do their listings right now versus people who are maybe a year out. And I don't know what format Parker wants to follow for this today, but I don't want to jump too far into the next subject. I would tell you that I approach, it's a case-by-case basis for each listing. And my goal is always to meet with my sellers as far in advance as possible. So even if they tell me that they're not ready for a year, I want to be able to meet with them now and establish a timeline for how we move forward now. When I have that first meeting, my goal is really to build a relationship with the client. And I want to come in, not making them feel pressured, but to let them know, let's take a look at what you have. Let's talk about what your goals are, your timeline is, and let's work from there. And I let them give me a tour of their property and tell me what it is that they love most about it, and what kind of drew them to the property, because that starts to help paint the picture of maybe the type of person who would be looking for that style of home. And that I take that into consideration when I think about how to market it. And then, as well as have them go through any kind of updates that they've done to the house or unique features, because I want to be able to look at those when I'm doing my market analysis on it as well. And from there, then I can talk about their goals and their timeline. If they're a year out, I can give a snapshot of what I think a house might be worth right now. But if they want to go on the market within the next 3 months, it should be fairly easy to give a range. And typically I will give a range. I will say that my recommendation always is to come in slightly below market value. So I feel like the clients that I had just showed you with their property, you know, we probably could have come on at 365 or 370, but I didn't encourage them to do that at first, because back in February, we weren't really sure like what was going to happen as we flowed into spring market. And I don't have any more recent sales other than this new one that's pending now. But to be able to have a range in a number so that I can make adjustment as close as possible to listing that house on the market. This particular house, we are going to come on a little bit higher now. There's nothing available. And so, having watched the market for a little while, I feel comfortable telling them to come on at like 370. And that's what we're going to list at. When it comes to a property, maybe where you're working a year in advance, I think we're approaching that very different. You can give them a snapshot of what you think a home might be worth now and over the next few months, but that's going to change. And it's also going to change based on what type of updates they might be willing to do to the property. And that's why I will get them to establish their timeline and then try to work backwards from there so that I can customize the approach we take. If a person is a year out from listing their property, I feel realistically you could get them to sign a listing agreement with you that lasts for an extended period of time. If it's something that they're just not ready for right now, then definitely there will be kind of follow-up involved in that. And before I take it any further, I just want to check and see, Parker, like, what do you want to jump in and say?
Is that well, no, good job, Jelena. Does anybody have any questions with how she runs her report? All right.
I would like to run through this again at another time, where I can maybe show, like, the next time that I have a listing, I will do a little more detailed process for this that I can share with people.
For sure. And this is great, Jelena. This is very detailed. It works at all price points, all locations. I like it. I joined 2 minutes late, but did you buy Cloud CMA, or how are you accessing it?
So I was just, I do have a membership to it now. I've had it for quite a while. They have a free version, and then they have a buyer version that you can put on. I think there's plans, because there's a lot more that you can do with it. We could customize it to PhD branding. There's graphics that you can have in it. You can do a side-by-side, not just the comparisons to the properties, but then different approaches to how it would sell. You can include a marketing plan in it. If it's a short sale, there's information you could include that would explain kind of what that process looks like. If it is your buyer is really set on coming on at the peak of the market, there are some graphics in there related to buyer psychology and how you alienate a percentage of buyers the higher you towards peak market value that you come on, or over market value, how many buyers you're losing in the market. And I think that those type of visual graphics are really important for sellers, and it takes some of the pressure off of you and what you're telling them, and it gives them the data to compare to. So I do like this site for that.
Sure. All right, let me talk a little bit about the psychology, and then I'll run a quick model for you guys too with how I do CMAs. I believe that 80% of the work of getting a listing is done up front. 20% is done when you actually meet with the people or during the listing. And the better that you can prepare for an appointment, the higher your chances are going to be of getting that listing, and the more confident you're going to be going into it. And so basically any listing or seller that I'm going to talk to, I want to find out a couple things before I meet with that person. One of the things is, what is most important to you in your home sale? That's a great question, because if somebody is analytical and they say, Jelena, I want the most amount of money possible, well, then I'm going to take the Jelena approach and go super deep into the numbers and use that to my advantage on the appointment, right? If they're saying, well, convenience, and I just want to have a stress-free, or as much stress-free of a transaction as possible, or, hey, I have medical problems. I just can't deal with the in and out of the house. There's all sorts of things that we have to be aware of. What I meant by that was like showings and leaving the house and blah, 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 blah. Like, we have to be aware of what the seller situation is before we go into it, because a strategy like what Jelena just laid out is not going to be a great one for somebody who just needs a quick home sale and is, struggling in life in general. It is, of course, because Jelena is going to know the numbers and know how to price the house, but we need to know what the person's personality type is. What is most important to you? Is it the highest price? Is it a convenient sale? Is it the terms of the transaction? Is it the logistics of actually getting to your next house? Like, let's open up the floor here, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and let's talk about what is most important to you, right?
Can I jump in real quick and just add one little thing? I want people to know this. I do what Parker is talking about up front. I don't present any numbers to my clients on my first visit. So this report that I use would be maybe for fine tuning after I've had a chance to look at their house. So go ahead, Parker, just continue with your thought.
Absolutely. And you can even say that to the client. You can say, from my experience, it's always best to find out if we're actually a good fit for each other first before we actually jump into the numbers and into the market and everything else that comes with it. Because if we find that we're not a compatible match for each other, it's going to be kind of tug of war the entire transaction. So I want to make sure that what I do and my approach is actually in line with what you're looking for. And the second question to that would be, what are you looking for in a realtor? What traits do you want to see in the person that you work with? And they might say things like, I want to make sure you're available. I want to make sure you know the market. I want to make sure when I call you, you get back to me within a respective period of time. I want to know that you're the number one person in my neighborhood, right? Or I want to know that you're the best of the best. You're going to find out through those 2 questions, what is most important to you in your home sale and what is most important to you and your realtor. You're going to basically be able to find out if that person's a driver, if they're an emotional person, if they're numbers driven. And you can take that information just by those 2 questions. And I ask them on every single appointment or conversation. You're going to figure out what approach to take. And if I get a numbers driven person, an analytical type, I'm going to go so deep into that CMA. We're going to have the computer open at the table connected to my hotspot. I'm going to go picture by picture of the comps to show them exactly how their house compares to the next one. And we're going to go through every single house. And by the end of it, I'm going to prove to them that their home should be listed at a certain price based on what they're looking for and based on their strategy. So tip number 1, make sure you have a hotspot, make sure you bring a computer or a tablet, and make sure you know how to operate in real time when you've got potentially 2 strangers sitting in front of you at their dining room table. And if I get a driver, somebody like myself, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to tell them how many homes I've sold, my accomplishments, why I'm a good fit for them. I'm going to give them the nuts and the bolts of pricing. I'm going to tell them exactly what's going to happen. If you price at this, you're going to sell for this. They want a quick in and out appointment. They want to know they're working with a professional, somebody who's experienced. And so if you're a newer agent, you feel like you have a driver, bring somebody who's more experienced with you. Bring them in on the conversation. And if you get somebody who's emotional, this is actually one of my favorite sellers, because when you're walking through the house, the whole goal of the walkthrough, by the way, is to form rapport and connection. It's not to measure the room. It's not to critique the carpet. It's to walk around and find commonalities, whether it's in pictures or that Xbox is sitting there, or you see the dog crate, or you see that the son goes to Clemson University. There is always something that I can pick out from the walkthrough that I can draw a comparison to and form rapport before we actually sit back down at a table and talk. And the reason I love emotionals is because it's really easy to tie them back into what their original goal was and to make it emotional. You know, Jelena, you told me that the most important thing with your home sale was to make sure that we have a really smooth process, because you're going through a lot in your life right now. And I'm really worried that if we list at this price, that we're actually not going to have a quick, convenient sale for you. And we're going to have a lot more trauma during this transaction than what I think you're looking for. And here's what I suggest in the meantime. There's just different ways to approach it, right? And I say this all the time, but we need to be masters of knowing personalities in this business. And like chameleons, like when we go out on appointments with people, we need to be able to recognize it. The best people in this business can recognize it instantly. This is stuff that I study, listen to, read. I take a personality test on myself like every couple of months. And I want to know exactly where I align, because sales is matching. Sales is matching somebody else. And sales is proving to somebody else that you're going to be the best fit for them. So, I'm going to go into the next part, which is the actual CMA and how I would run this. But the first thing you got to realize is if you come on this training and you want to improve your CMA skills or your pricing skills, and then you don't do any practice after this, it's not going to do you any good. You're not going to get any better. I would make it a goal of having somebody on the team send you 10 properties a week, and you need to do a CMA and send it to them and have them critique it for you. Whether that's me, Holly, Jelena, pick somebody on this call, practice 10 of them a week. And if you do that for a month, you're going to be an expert. You can't practice in real time, and you can't practice on your clients. If you go into a listing appointment and you're practicing on your clients, you're going to be in rough shape, unless you're just an amazing character and personality in there and you can, draw it all together and sell them. So another question, you guys, number 3 is, and this is for yourself, but like based on the first 2 answers, what kind of pricing strategy do we want to have? Like, Jelena, I'm happy to list over what the market is telling us, but we have to be in alignment that if we don't sell your house and we don't have the activity in your house in the first 2 weeks, that we're willing to adjust the price. There's 3 ways to price a property. You can reach and price it high. You can price it at market value, or you can price it slightly below market value and generate multiple offers.
Right.
What strategy are we going to go with? I very rarely go, I don't like to list properties below asking price. Probably because in the last 6 years, we've been in an accelerating market in general. And we know that if we price according to the comps in the last 6 months, the house is probably going to sell quickly anyway. But we need to figure out, what does that seller really want? Let me open it up. I'm going to do a quick CMA for you guys. So this is the property I want to do. And we can also run one scenario too, where it's like farmland, $2 million, something like that, right? This is a property that recently is sold by our team. It's a split level in Apple Valley. When I met with these people, they came to me and said, we have already bought a house. We want to have a quick, convenient sale, and we want to get the best offers that we possibly can get. So to me, that said, we don't want to screw around. We need to price this correctly. We need to get the house ready correctly. And we need to be on par. We don't have 2 weeks to give away, right? Because if we do, they might have overlapping payments, or they might have struggles with moving, logistics with moving companies, all those things. So when this property comes in, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to look up the history of the property and figure out, has this property sold before? If it has sold before, it's really easy just to go back and copy the MLS number and then bring it back into your criteria page and put it in here. Hopefully you can all see this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and I'm going to plug it in here. I always start with 1 mile. And if we don't get the comps that we want in 1 mile, we can expand it to 2. Then we can expand it to 3. Then we can go to 5. I also try to keep it in the school district that the house is in. And if you get in to District 196, like the one we're in now, there are little corners of each of these cities that go to different school districts, right? We know that in Egan, a little sliver by Highway 13 actually goes to Burnsville schools. It's a significant downgrade to going to Egan schools. If you're in Apple Valley, you might be on the Eastview or Apple Valley border. That's a difference. In my opinion, Eastview is a stronger school, even though I went to Apple Valley. And so on and so on. There's a little Bermuda Triangle of Farmington and Lakeville, and you know what I mean? So don't.
Can we say that?
What's that?
School districts that are better?
Do we say that? Can you say that? What's the actual question?
Yeah, I mean, it was my understanding that we can guide them to a website that can tell them the different like gradings of the school districts, but it was always my understanding that we couldn't actually give like opinion on what school districts are like better than the others. I thought that was kind of like the same thing with like they have to find that information out for themselves.
Yeah, for the purpose of this training, I'm talking like that, but in front of a seller, you're not going to want to be giving your opinions on what a better school is, unless you absolutely have to, or they offer it up first. It's funny. We had a situation with a buyer on our team who brought in a pre-approval letter from USAA, and Jackson, you might know this person. Person was like, I'm pre-qualified with USAA. And we were like, well, hey, let's try to get somebody local that, you know, is boots on the ground that can assist you here, because we haven't had the best experience with USAA. Are you open to another opinion? They said, well, I actually worked for USAA for 30 years. I'm like, oh, okay. So if I would have come out and just said, you know what, USAA is garbage, they're terrible to work for, I would offend them, right? Same thing, Jackson, is I've had people that have been teachers at schools in years past, and they like a teacher at Falcon Ridge Middle School or Scott Highlands Middle School. And we're like, oh no, Falcon Ridge is far and above better than Scott Highlands. Well, you're getting yourself into a situation there because you don't have all the information yet, right? But it is fact that a home in a different school district is priced differently based on the location. So by searching for school district and telling your sellers, hey, let's start with the actual most relevant properties first. And if we can't find enough comps, let's expand it out and let's talk about what the differences are.
Well,
right.
Jackson, I would just say, I mean, the difference between talking to a buyer versus talking to a seller, right? If you're talking to a buyer, yeah, you know, you've got to be a little bit more guiding them to resources. They make a decision what's the best school district for their family, their future, their kids. this standpoint, we're talking to a seller, and just to the point Parker just made, it's a semi-factual reason that, you know, Minnetonka is different than Hopkins, and Apple Valley is different than Eastview. You know, there are, Minnesota is a very school district driven state. You can tell the sellers that your intent is to maintain comps that are within that district.
And I would say just mix up your verbiage with like, in my experience, because you're talking about listing their home. In my experience, buyers are tending to pay more for this school district over another. That's
Or
like a financial fact. If
You could just show them the stats too, very easily, right? So for this, we're comping out this property on Genesee, and I started with 1 mile. I'm going to go coming soon, active, pending, and closed. And MLS now just punches in 0 to 180, which is 6 months, which is fine. If you want to take it back farther, you can, if you don't have enough comps. But the reason I pull these is I want to see what the coming soon properties are. What are the competition going to look like? What are the active homes on the market looking like? Because that's going to be our direct competition. What do the pendings look like? Because those are the homes that were on the market and sold. They accepted offers, typically tend to be the best priced homes. I'll show you in a second. And then what are the closed? Because the closed homes are the ones that the appraiser is going to use. And the appraiser is going to use the ones that are most relevant and closest to the property, like Jelena just showed you on that map. So let's start there. This house, by the way, I know this because I went to the county property search, which is a habit you should always do. Dakota property search. Dakota County's got a really nice little site. You can toggle this based on satellite or view or whatever. I'm just looking for property details. This page gives me my details. Finished square footage, 1895. I'm going to write this on a little side piece of paper. Bedrooms, 5. Now, I know split levels well enough to know that there's one that's really, really small in the basement. So I'm going to look for 4 and 5 bedroom homes. I'm going to look for what kind of home it is and what year it was built, 1969. That's not going to be a big deal for you in your first CMA because most of the homes in Apple Valley were built within the same time frame. But the reason we're going to take that is we're going to go back to our CMA. Our house, remember, is 1895. So I'm going to go a couple hundred square feet below, and I'm going to go a couple hundred square feet higher. And I want to get a range of properties here that are going to be pretty similar on similar size lots. The other thing I'm going to do, and this becomes more relevant in, like Jeff said, Excelsior or Minnetonka or Hopkins or Plymouth. There are certain properties that are like 2,000 square feet that might be $1 million, right? So those might come up in your comps, and then you're going to have to manually pull them out. In Apple Valley, that's not going to happen, and I know that from experience. So if you have properties that come up that are $1 million properties and you're looking at a 400,000, we're going to be pulling those out manually once we get into the CMA. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about anything next level here. I'm just talking about basic facts. I would do coming soon, active, pending, and closed within 1 mile. It's always fun to just look at map search just to see. Personally, I know every neighborhood in Apple Valley very well. So if they're pulling in a neighborhood that's not relevant, I might come up here and, like, you know, trim the comps, something like this, because Cedar Isles, for those Apple Valley residents, typically sells for 500 to 600,000, which is a different neighborhood, even though it's right across from Galaxy. And then just little known fact, even this Holiday gas station used to be a Paul's Market, had the best donuts in Apple Valley. We used to ride our bikes. Side note, personalize this. Parker grew up right here. And we used to ride our bikes as like 7-year-old kids down the street without telling our parents. We'd go down Pennock, which is speed limit 40. We'd cut over down to 140th, which is speed limit 60. And we would ride our bikes to that gas station as kids. So I know Apple Valley really well. And that's probably a story that I'm going to tell the sellers when I meet with them. I used to rollerblade down here as a 10-year-old to get donuts from Paul's Market before Holiday bought them out. What does that do? Somebody yell it out.
Market knowledge.
Market
Correct.
knowledge, right? Exactly. I used to play street hockey with these two kids that are your neighbors. I used to grow up going to the same middle school as the Anderson family down the street. Like, I know this neighborhood really, really well. And at this point in my career, I've sold a lot of houses in this area. And if you don't have that knowledge, don't bullshit them. Like, don't try to make up anything either, right? Just stick to business. Okay, so square footage, I'm going to do an approximate square footage, just in general area. And by the way, for those that are newer, 200 to 300 square feet below, 200 to 300 square feet above is where you should start. You can always trim it or expand it. But with this one, when we open up the results, I can see that we have 10 properties. Okay, all of these properties, 390, 430, 375, 385, 389.9, 389.9, 360. Okay, we're in the ballpark of properties here. We're in the ballpark of square footage because everything falls in that 200 to 300 square foot range. We've got years built, 69, 87, 86, 76. Okay, no new construction. These are all similar properties. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to page through these quickly. This is our listing. This is Jen's, by the way. Okay, similar property, split level, decent lot. The better you get, the quicker you can go through these, but I can tell the floor plan just by looking at the front of the house. This is a 3-level split. This is our house. This is our split. Here's a split, 385, 389, 133rd. That's it. That's Greenleaf neighborhood. Okay, these are the closed. And like Jelena pointed out, we need to pay attention to when these closed. This closed on 10/20. This closed on 3/10. And if it's in the winter or in the summer, we need to take that into consideration with our pricing. But overall, I think we have a pretty good comp list here. So I'm going to take all of these. I'm going to report a CMA. And if you want to, you can always plug in your property. So just so you know how I did that, you can take the tax ID, which can be found on the property details report right here. You copy that if it doesn't have an MLS number. Okay, if you have an MLS number, then just punch it in here, fill it, and finish. View CMA. The whole reason I'm doing this is because I want to look at page 3. This is the page that I print this out separate from the report. And I put this on top of anything that I'm going to bring to the house. Because I want to see what these numbers look like and I want to be able to reference these numbers quickly. One, two, three. Okay. Now, this is the report, the breakdown of the numbers for the single line report that we were just looking at. We have 1 coming soon property. We have 1 active property. We have 4 pendings and we have 4 solds. And when we look at the breakdown here, average of all is 386, 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 1,947 square feet, built in 1976. The averages of these are extremely close to our subject. 1855, 1969, single family home, split level, etc. Okay. I'm printing this and I want to show this to them because it's harder to page back and forth when you have this up on a screen than it is to just slide it right in front of them. When I look at these pendings, I see that the price per square foot is $202 a foot per property. The average sales price in pending status is $384,950. And then when those pendings they sell, they're actually selling for slightly higher than they were listing for at $386. Average price per square foot is $199. And look, the 1 active property is priced at $221. We can look at that and say they're $20 ahead or above more expensive than what our comps are at. That's just a property that's overpriced. So when I'm looking at this, 7 days on market, all of these are extremely consistent. Then the next question I'm asking myself is, where is the market going? Are we in an improving market? Are we in a stable market, or are we in a market where listings are sitting and prices are drastically decreasing? In this price point, we're in a market that's, I would say, sustaining itself or going up. So when I'm talking about pricing strategy, we can say, hey, look, we're looking at this from 6 months ago. Now we're in this market. On average, listings are taking 7 days to sell, and they're selling just above what they're listed at. So my strategy for this would be, let's list it at what the comps tell us and generate multiple offers. That's one strategy. Any questions about how I got to these numbers? Okay, the third thing you should ask yourself is, does a strategy that you believe in align with the seller's needs, right? If the seller has a specific situation that you need to help them with, is your pricing strategy going to be in line with what they're looking to do? And that just comes down to a conversation with the seller of, hey, here's the data. Here's what's going to happen if we list at this price. And here's how I'm going to get you into the next house with the most certainty and the most reliability, right? We generated 10 offers on this listing, by the way, and it's sold for $400,000. So this is going to drop down as a comp into the closed listings on 7/17, and somebody else will use that to their advantage. I don't like to reference Zillow a lot, you guys, but Zillow has a couple nice features. First of all, every seller is looking at the Zestimate. So you should know the Zestimate before you go into the house. Because if your price is drastically below the Zestimate, and let's just say you say, hey, Jeff, I think we should list at 350. And in the back of their head, they know that their estimate's 390. And you don't address that, there's got to be a mismanagement there of expertise and expectation. So something I would say is, hey, look, from my experience, my clients love to look at Zillow. It's the #1 website in the world for homes. However, occasionally the Zestimate is off. It's not exactly accurate. I know for your home, your Zestimate is 390, which would be fantastic. But let me show you the actual data and why I suggest we list at 375 for blah, 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 blah. Right? If you don't acknowledge Zillow, you could have a misalignment there with the seller, and they might just look at you across the table and be like, this guy's an idiot. They could, right? The other reason
so many of them, I just want to add to that, so many sellers have already gone on here before they're even talking with an agent and have got that number of the Zestimate in their head. So you have to be able to talk about it and tell them why that number's not a match if it's not a match. And if you don't know it, you can't do that.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Another feature that I like is the map, because Zillow will show the estimates for each of the neighboring properties. Sellers love to pick apart their neighbors' homes. Oh, I've been in Tim's home and his basement is terrible. He has rubber flooring and he hasn't painted in 20 years. Okay, well, let's use that to our advantage then, because we have that information, right? But we have this up so that we can see, how do the lots look? How far away are they from the house? Do they back up to a street? Do they have a big squared backyard? We use this to our advantage, right? The other thing you can do, I'll use this. Go to Redfin, the second most popular website in the world. Let's see what Redfin says. They have added a ton of stuff onto here, by the way. Okay, sorry. They should have a feature here where they'll tell you what they think the house is worth. My point is you could say, hey, look, your estimate is 390. Redfin is saying your property is 385. My professional research has identified that your property is worth 382.2. And here's the reasons why. At least you're acknowledging it up front so that they're not coming back to you, like I said earlier, and saying, well, my estimate's 40,000 more than what you guys said it was worth. Okay.
I've heard it before, but can someone remind me of the quick script of, you know, like the actual reasons why that Zillow number is off? I just have it, for me, I have to hear things like 10 times before it'll stick in my brain. And I know I've heard that before, but I just can't remember.
I think one thing that I would say, Taylor, is I'd say, look, Zillow's great for a lot of reasons. Acknowledge it. Because if they love Zillow and you're saying it's terrible, you're going to potentially rub them the wrong way. But the thing, Taylor, about Zillow is that Zillow's headquarters is in Seattle, Washington. They have to pull data from our MLS. So they haven't been boots on the ground. They're not walking around the streets. They're nationally just looking at all these different properties and comparing them apples to apples, square footage, location, sales prices, those type of things. So occasionally you'll see a Zestimate that's way out of whack in areas that don't have a lot of comps, because what they have to do actually is they have to go to Maple Grove to pull their comps, or they have to go to Egan or Inver Grove Heights. So I'd say Zillow's great for many reasons, but they're not boots on the ground like we are, and they don't have access to our CMA software like we're using today to show you what's selling in your neighborhood. I think that's really that's all you have to really do at this point.
So you're pretty much saying, like, imagine, like, maybe you could compare it to whatever their job is. It's like, imagine if somebody from California, you know, was trying to price your home. Is it going to be perfect? No.
What I tell people is that they use, there's an algorithm involved, and that does not always reflect the recent information on the property. If someone just replaced their kitchen, how is Zillow factoring in what those updates are that went into the property? So that's why I tell people I always want to be able to look at what it is that they have to offer before we come up with a firm number, and that might give a good basis for a range of pricing, but it's not an exact number.
Yeah, that's good too, because I feel like it kind of doubles of what you would just tell them, how it's like a out of state opinion, and because of that, they don't know the most accurate things as well about your home.
Yeah, Taylor too, what you could say is, yeah, you know what, that Zestimate is basically an AVM, which is an auto evaluating tool that all these tech companies are using. In fact, we can look at what our county is doing and how our county is using the same technology as well. If you click on the property tax from here, we all know that Dakota County is giving their opinion right here. Real AVM 337, real AVM range 305 to 370. And guess what? That's way off from what I listed this property and sold it for. I sold it for 400. The second that property sells and closes, all of this data is going to be different because the AVM will update. So what I would show them this page and say, hey, this is our county, which is actually probably more accurate. Here is our Zillow's estimate. Here is the Redfin estimate. I mean, even our personal websites now, like you can go on any brokerage's website and I think they have AVMs built in, right? So you don't have to use more than your counties, Zillow, and Redfin. Like those are three really credible sources, right? And also just play it off cool. Like, yeah, you know, that is actually one of the things most of my sellers ask me is what goes into this estimate. It's really interesting. And if somebody's techie and analytical, what I'll say is, you know, in the old days, what actually used to happen was there was a three-way syndication between Zillow and our North Star MLS here. And there was a 48-hour turnaround time from that technology hitting and going back to Zillow, which was why in the past, a lot of the information on Zillow was incorrect. You know, a lot of my buyers, in fact, would reach out and say, hey, Parker, can I see this house? When in fact, it was already sold or pending, but it hadn't updated on the site yet. And so, you know, now Zillow is a broker in all of the states. So Zillow feeds directly from MLS. It's pretty accurate, I would say. And we don't hear that as often anymore. That's way too much information though. Right? Like that's way.
I like too much information though, because then it helps me get the short answer in my head.
And the short answer is good because the goal is you're asserting yourself as the expert, not Zillow as the expert. They need your service and what you are bringing in terms of getting their home sold, not what a website says.
Okay, one more question, because then I have all the information. I know kind of a similar thing where it's like, I've heard the Zillow script before and I just need it in my brain. I've also heard the county script before. Like, remind me why that is usually inaccurate. Is it because, you know, these things are getting updated the most clearly when a sale actually happens? So if a sale hasn't happened there in a while, like the resources haven't been touched, you know, on that property.
Have you ever gone on to Realist Tax, Taylor, and
Yes.
seen a property where it says what the tax record says versus what the MLS says?
Yes.
My house is a perfect example of that. So I have a 6-bedroom, 4-bathroom house. We finished our basement a year and a half ago, and our county has not assessed those changes to our property. And so it's not necessarily reflected on the tax record. It's reflected, it would be reflected on the MLS if I decided to sell it. So sometimes there's a discrepancy between what's updated at the county level and what is really put on the MLS based on the current condition of the house. You just have to be able to look at those differences.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind, you know, it's kind of the same as Zillow, but different, where, you know, now it's not this random person from California. It's just the concept of things haven't been updated, you know, properly.
Yeah, Taylor,
Even
too,
if
the
you
other thing
pull-
too is you
Like
have
when
to
you
look at
start
the
your
history.
CMA, you pull a mile radius and grab anything that's generally close to your listing. It's kind of what the AVMs are doing. They're not sorting out as much. I mean, it might to some extent, but it's not sorting out one story versus split levels. It's kind of grabbing a average of square footage in the area, and it, you know, is it close to a freeway? Are we on the other side of the freeway? It's not grabbing, you know, it's not probably not deciphering school district only if it crosses, you know, different borders and things like that. So, you know, think about the first 2 steps you take out of CMA, you kind of plug in some basic data, grab a radius. More or less, that's what the AVMs are doing. They're not deciphering any very specific details about the home. So that's really where the inaccuracies come in. So yeah, if you pull a mile radius on a Minneapolis house, you're going to get a ton of examples, and those are probably pretty accurate because there's a ton of data very close together. But you pull something in a more of a suburb where there's different borders and freeways or whatever, you know, then it's just that where those inaccuracies come in that they're still using.
Absolutely. It also depends on the history of the property. So this one that we were just using as an example, nobody has been in this property because it was the original owners. So a county appraiser has never been into this house. They have no data on this house at all. And we can look at that very simply by going to the history. And there's nothing here, right? You can see that they did a refi in 2017, but that's just an appraisal. Whereas if we go to some of our other comps here, if we click on the history of this house, you can see that this house just sold. It sold in 2000. Still hard to believe 23 years ago now, but you go to some of these others and there's going to be a lot more data on these houses, right? Every time it sells, it updates. So you can use that to your advantage too. I want to show you one more thing. So I said 80% of getting a listing is all done up front. And I truly believe that. We have a great tool in High Note, and everybody on the team should be using High Note at a high level, and everybody should have their own template created. This is my template. That's why I have my face here. And when I come in here, I'm able to customize this for each person that we meet with. So you can literally go in and do this today, you guys. Create your presentation and make it the way you want it to look. And then every time you go on a listing appointment, just update the slides, right? This one doesn't ever have to change. Meet the Pemberton Homes team, get to know Parker, online reviews. Okay, somebody clicks this and they can see how cool I am by just looking at my profile, right? I don't have to get into the house and say, I sold this, I sold that, I'm number one, I've been doing this for so many years. I don't have to do any of that because I already sent it to them and they can do their own research. And if that's important to them, they can come back to us and ask those questions. I would rather get to the house and get right down to business of what is most important to you in your home sale and what are you looking for in a realtor? because they're going to tell you that, and that is more important than anything. This is just one slide. I also have, how do we price properties? We look at square footage consideration. What's going on in Apple Valley? All I did here, I went to spar.com. I pulled Apple Valley for the month of April 2023. I downloaded it into my downloads, and then I uploaded it into my high note presentation. So I have relevant, accurate data. 2023 market data, same exact thing, straight from SPAR. This is allowing a seller who's very analytical to come in here and look at every single page. If you didn't do this, you'd have to do this at their table. And there's no human way to go through everything in this presentation in like a couple hours. You'd be sitting at their table for 6 hours, which no one wants to do. How do we price properties? Our strategy, sales performance. By the way, you can copy all of these tiles, you guys. You do not have to do it on your own. You don't have to create it yourself. Marketing your property, staging your property. We use the best photographers in real estate. We use the best videographers at certain price points. I say above 500,000. Somebody can sit there and watch this video with 2020 on the TV and figure out how great we are at marketing properties without me having to tell them. Show them, don't tell them, right? That's my philosophy. So I bake that right into the report. We talk about the importance of floor plans and 3D tours, importance of disclosure. I even put a seller's net sheet in there. Final recommendations. And then a little note to end on. The whole reason I love High Note, you guys, is imagine this. We have an appointment next Friday. We send this report. This report goes out to them and they start looking at this report all week. The reason that's important for us is High Note is going to gather all of the data of the user's clicks. And I'm sorry if this is repetitive, if you've seen this before. I want to point it out to you again. If we know we're going on an appointment next week and we see that the sellers have logged in to look at a report 40 times, we know that they're a very educated seller and they know all about our system and what we're doing. Right? I send this out to them. Again, I'll just reiterate. I send this out to them in an email that looks something like this. Click here to review my listing and marketing presentation. Here's the link to High Note. Okay, they log in. High Note's going to show us every single time that they log in by going into this analytics tab. Jobs have opened this 2 times, have looked at it for 10 minutes and 50 seconds, checking out 4 of 20 assets. Asset is a slide, right? It'll pick up when they looked at it, how long they looked at it, and which slides they were looking at. Why is that important? Somebody tell me.
Figure out what's important to them.
Absolutely.
Those slides dictate what they want out of their sale.
Absolutely. What are you looking for in a realtor? Somebody that can market your home well and get you the highest price? Well, guess what? They might spend 20 minutes looking at your marketing presentation or an example of the videos that you're doing. And this software will show us, just like BombBomb does, every time somebody logs in to look at our presentations. And so here's the other thing. If they don't log in and look at your presentation, what does that tell you? Somebody tell me. They might not be that serious. They might be just
They're
fishing
unlikely
for
to
a
live
price.
with you right now.
They might be bringing you in to compare you to somebody else.
Mhm.
If somebody doesn't open my presentation, the day before I go on that appointment, I'm going to call them and say, hey, Jelena, it's Parker. I just wanted to call you real quick. I'm really excited to see you tomorrow. Are we still confirmed for 3 o'clock? Yes, we are. Great. I'll see you tomorrow at 3. By the way, have you had a chance to look at my marketing presentation yet? Oh, you haven't? Okay, I'll resend the link. Please look at that tonight so that when I get to your house tomorrow, we can focus on the only thing that matters, and that's accomplishing your goals. Right? How easy
I'll
is
take
that?
a look at it.
And yeah, apps. Oh, okay. Thanks, Jelena. By the way, is djobs@frontiernet.net the best email to send it to, or would you like me to send it somewhere else? Oh, okay. All right. right? We already have the information in our head. We're acting stupid, but we're being smart. If somebody does not, if you send an email like this, you guys, I got 4 attachments in this thing. I've included the seller checklist, which marketing can give you, by the way. You should save this on your computer. What sets us apart, who we are as realtors, cost of a sale. There is so much information in this presentation here. If somebody doesn't open this, they're not serious about selling. Just
Mhm.
simple as that. I even throw in links to show them other properties that we've done. I think this is the Branch-In property. But this site will allow them to come in here and look at all the 3D content, the videos, the property websites. I'm sending them all this so they know how we market properties so that we don't have to show them when we're in front of them. This has been an enormous tool for me. So I won't kick the horse anymore, but you guys should all go into High Note, create a template for yourself, label it just like Callie's presentation, right? And you can edit all of these for each specific appointment you go on.
Parker, can I ask with the High Note presentation, is there an expiration date on that link or is that indefinite? So if our clients are 6 months out from listing, a year out from listing, and they're not ready to necessarily sign paperwork, this is a good tool, a nurture tool to be checking back and seeing how often they're looking at the presentation and information.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that too, because people will continue to check in and then it'll email you and let you know when they're checking in.
That like 9 by 10 or whatever it is.
It's invaluable. And here's the other thing, like not to creep you guys out, but when we're recruiting you to the team, we're using the same presentation. So when you open it up and you look at online lead opportunities, or you look at our training slide, or you look at our sales history, we know we're doing the exact same thing with you as we're doing with our sellers. And you're just probably finding out right now that we get all the analytics to that, right? So sorry,
Is there a way?
I don't mean to creep you out, but that way, when you come into our office and we have our first conversation, I know what's most important to you.
That's good. Is there a way, because part of what we were going to talk about today was how do we nurture listings and listing leads? Because we might be connecting with a lead who is a year out from selling, and we don't want to be able to lose contact with them. So something like this could be used up front to gear what is most important to that lead. Can we go back into that presentation and then update that with new information that we're going to send out a couple months down the road? So if markets change, we can update some information, and that's a great touch point with the lead. I'm going to send you an updated link to that report or presentation I had sent to you. Please check it out. It's got some more information in it, something like that.
Totally. Yep. You can use this in so many different levels. This is one that Austin sent out. So he's got his nice picture here. Nice picture, Austin. He includes team, online reviews. This is our updated ops team picture. Net proceeds. So if I get this from a guy like Austin, I'm going to be like, this kid's got his stuff straight. Like, he's prepared for the appointment. He has put thought into this. He is ready to go. And he's giving you everything that you need to look at this ahead of time. I love this slide too, the seller roadmap, because guess what? Somebody that sold a house 25 years ago may not feel like they know the process of selling a home. So here's a slide.
Completely different.
Completely different, right? They didn't even have the internet 25 years ago. Well,
We did.
what was that, like 98?
Just different.
Yeah. So great job, Austin. And now all Austin has to do is come in here, change this. Hey, Mike, whatever. He can pop some of these slides in and out. If you get in the habit of doing this, you guys, you'll start crushing your appointments, because then when you get to the house, they'll start saying, hey, I looked at that report you sent. I'm really impressed with your photographers. You really do a nice job.
Hey, Parker, can I ask you something?
Yep.
I seem to have this issue that I will send the High Note presentation out, and then, like the next week, I'll go to another listing appointment, and then I will change the things around, obviously, for a different person, different address. And then the the presentation that I sent to the people I met last week, they're trying to go look at it again. And now that when they go to look at it, they're seeing the new presentation that is for a totally different house.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I'm sure it's a
I
user
think so.
error, but
So if I were to take this right here, this is why I do this. Edit, come over here and click this, create a link. And I would say like Carter and receive analytics by email, require email to view. No, don't make them log in. Disable asset download. No, you just want to know that they're looking at it. This Carter should create you a private link for that presentation.
okay, yeah, because then I'm finding myself going back and changing shit around again. It just is like a mess.
Yep. And you should be able to come in here and copy to a new one. So if you want an identical presentation, then you can
That's
copy
what I
it.
do.
Okay, well, then you need to rename it and create that separate link, and you shouldn't have that issue anymore.
Okay,
This, I would just change this. I'm not going to right now, but come in
Yeah, I
here,
get
create link. And so like today is Wednesday, let's say your appointment's next Wednesday. By Saturday, if they haven't looked at your report, I would grab this link, sorry, Carter, and I'll do this again. I would copy this and I would go and text it to them. Hey, Carter, happy Saturday. I'm just doing a little prep work here on the weekend to prepare for our meeting on Wednesday. I just wanted to make sure you saw my marketing presentation so that we can get right down to business talking about what's most important, which is your home sale. Text it to them. So much easier. And then they have no excuses for not clicking it, right?
okay.
All right, let me address the questions and then I got to bounce. But I noticed somebody asked a question of like, if we wanted to practice the CMA, who's the expert? What I would do is I would pick out a group of people on the team. Let's see, I'd start with your pod leaders. Yeah, put it in your pod and say, hey, can somebody double check my work here? The address is this. Here's a link to my CMA. But you let me know what your opinion of the price is. People are happy to help you with that. You just saw how long it took me to do that CMA. It took 2 minutes. So if you want me to double check your work, email it to me. You got to email me the information though. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to go deep and find out stuff, right? You could pick out an agent on the team that you wanted as an accountability partner, Callie and Sonia, and you say, hey, look, we want to get better at listing properties. Let's practice with each other. Give me an address today. I'll give you an address tomorrow. Let's double check each other's work. And before you know it, you're going to get better. Parker, can you add the link to your high note like Austin did? Taylor, I think I just addressed that, but were you referring to something else?
I think she wants to see a copy of your actual presentation so if you could put a link in the comments there
Oh.
for her to link to yours. Is that what you mean, Taylor?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I want to like reference it when I'm making mine.
Of course, you can copy it too. Just take it and then put your spin on it. This publish on web, create link. Taylor G. This is like the best program ever, because in the old days, and I still do this sometimes if I have older clients, we used to have to just do pre-listing packets and you would mail them to people. And a lot of times they would just pick up that mail with the rest of the shit and they would just put it on their counter and not look at it. And you get to the home, you put like 4 stamps on there and they didn't even open it. It's just a waste of money. All right, Taylor, this is coming straight to you, but just know that you can log in and go create yours just like Austin did. All right, I think Jeff said it best. Start small, start simple. If you don't find at least 10 comps, then just expand, go to 2 miles, 3 miles, go to 5 miles, expand, contrast your square footage. If you get an acreage property, it's really difficult, just email us. We'll help you price the property. And if you get in a really sticky situation that we didn't talk about today, like just send us a message and we'll help you take care of it too. Sound good?
Yeah, great stuff.
All right, Adam, I want you to find somebody that will be your accountability partner and tell me by the afternoon who that's going to be. Okay.
Okay, I was gonna ask too, could we do another one of these from a buyer perspective and how to use a CMA to negotiate a better price? I know we're out of time today, but and what like verbiage we can say to negotiate?
Absolutely. You should use the exact same process though. You start with, let's say you're going to make an offer on one of these properties. Let's say it's Hanover. You're going to take this, copy this MLS, and you're just going to repeat the process of what we just did. And you're going to look at pendings and solds, right? We run this, you're going to get the same numbers. We're going to take this, go CMA, finish. I'm flying through this, so just at some point sit down with me, Adam, and we'll look at this. But this is going to show you exactly where you're at. And if the property is if it has a bunch of comps that are below the sales price, then you know the price is probably overpriced or too high. That the other thing, Jelena, you might want to talk about this, but like if somebody lists a house, 5 days later, Adam comes in with an offer and is like, hey, Jelena, I ran a CMA on your property and it looks like you're like 25,000 too high. What's going to happen?
Well, chances are I am showing them the comps that I've used and what went into the property, how I priced the property. So I'm going to want to know that, and I'm going to pull up some comps right on the spot. So if I had that information available and handy, then I would know what to look for.
Yeah, you're going to probably offend somebody. They're going to look you up and say who the
Oh, you
F
mean
are
what their perspective is? I thought you were asking
Yeah.
how I would address that. I would just
Yeah.
go head to head with them, yeah, and tell them how I established my property. But I've had agents do that as well.
Absolutely. And it's something like this, Adam. It's, hey, Adam, I got an offer on your property at 123 Apple Street. All the details are attached. Just wanted to let you know, my buyer and I have seen a lot of properties and we made an offer that we feel is in line with the market. And we hope to get an answer from your seller soon. For expectation purposes, when do you think you'll be able to get back to me? I love asking that question because a buyer's gonna be like, Adam, have you heard back? No. 11 p.m. text, Adam, have you heard back? No. Then you just let them know that you actually text them back at 11, which is also a negative, by the way. Next day, Adam, have you heard back? Then they think you're not doing your job, right? Yeah. So what is the expectation of when you're going to talk to your sellers and get back to me so that I can share that with the buyers? It works both ways.
Perfect.
And if you really get into an argument.
Oh, go ahead, Parker. You finish.
Well, I'm sorry, just real quick. If you get in an argument about price, you just say, hey, look, we have an offer on the table. An offer in hand is worth something. So why don't you take this to your sellers? Come back to me with a counter. Come back. Let's start working on something. But without an offer, you can't start working on anything.
Yeah. In my experience, most of the people who on the buy side that are assertive enough to come in and tell you that you overpriced your property are trying to set the stage for a lowball offer. So take that with a grain of salt, or you know what, maybe you know what's coming your direction.